Peace, love, liberty, radio.
And the walls come crashing down as the war at home reaches your town. You have no choice, it's safe and clean. We all submit to the war machine.
So today is Wednesday. It's the day where I answer your questions. It's the Ask Me Anything. I've only got 2 questions this week, but one of them is a lot more in-depth than the other one. The first question that I will begin with, and by the way, both of these came from Facebook. If you have questions, of course, you could tag me on Facebook, ask the question there, but I much prefer getting the questions via email. You can send that email to ama@fppradio.com. The first question comes to me from a friend of mine who saw a post on Facebook that was shared by Oil-Filled Families of America. And the question is this accurate? If so, how or why is it significant? And should we be worried? So technically, that's not one question, that's 3. But this is the first question that I will get into. So the numbers here from Oil-Filled Families of America is rig counts, select states with key plays, and they don't say what with key plays means, but what they show here is this week, change from last week, 3 months ago, and 1 year ago. And this was posted about a week ago. So what we have here, and I'm not going to go through all of the states as far as their numbers, but it shows Alaska, Arkansas, California, Colorado, Kansas, Mississippi, Louisiana, New Mexico, North Dakota, Ohio, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, Texas, Utah, West Virginia, Wyoming. And then it has the total for all of the U.S. and then total for Canada. And I just want to hit on a couple of things real quick that the numbers here show before saying whether or not the numbers are accurate. So the total number this week, which is actually 1 week ago, shows in the U.S. 838 oil rigs, which is down from 842 the week prior. 3 months ago, there were 859 oil rigs in the U.S. and 1,931 in the U.S. 1 year ago. Now, is this accurate? Mostly, and I say that because I found numbers from Baker Hughes, which is sort of the go-to company when you get rig count numbers, and I figured that out by doing a search trying to find out how many oil rigs there were in the U.S., and this was the first 5 results were all Baker Hughes. And when you go to their website, it says all questions on the Baker Hughes rig count and well count should be emailed to Oilfield Knowledge Center. And they've got other stuff on here that, it makes it seem like they are the people that you go to find out the oil rig count. And the numbers that they have, it's off by 1 or 2 from what this photo shows. The photo also, instead of just saying Louisiana, it says North Louisiana. And, well, there's no such state as North Louisiana, and they also don't show a south part of Louisiana. I figured, whoever's making this graphic, they're breaking Louisiana up into 2 things, or Baker Hughes had it broken up. Well, no, Baker Hughes just shows Louisiana. Also on this graphic, they show California land, but nothing for California water. Baker Hughes does not differentiate between land and water in their count. Texas is also interesting here because 1 year ago, Texas had roughly 900 oil rigs. Now there are 363. So, the follow-up question after, is this accurate? And I would say, for the most part, I'm not going to squabble over, they were off by 1 here and off by 2 here. It's close enough to where, if they put this thing up, 5 days prior or whatever. Like it's close enough to being accurate to where it's mostly accurate. If it is accurate, how or why is it significant? Should we be worried? And I don't know why the oil-filled families of America posted this photo. They posted it without commentary other than to say, "Thanks, Doc," and I have no clue what that means. But some of the people in the comments are saying, like, this is scary. And so I could understand why someone would ask, like, why is this significant? Now, one thing that I can only speculate here is that regulations definitely play a role in this. It could also be that some of these rigs have run dry, or the well, rather, have run dry, so you don't need a rig where there's a dry well. And you also have the increased use of fracking, where they, spray high-pressure water up underground at rocks, and you get the oil and the stuff out of it that way. So that might also play a role in this, but I don't really know, because the numbers from Baker Hughes, they don't offer explanations as far as why the numbers have gone down. They just show what the numbers are. And the final question, should we be worried? I don't know. If you're worried about getting your oil from overseas and you only want American oil, then maybe you should be worried. But otherwise, I don't see any real legitimate reason to be worried about a decreased number of oil rigs, especially as of late, where we've seen the price of the oil barrels going down and gas is becoming cheaper. So, I would not necessarily worry about it. I'm not worried about it. And, if you decide to worry about it, then, go ahead. But worrying doesn't really change anything. What I would be more worried about is all of the regulations that exist that hinder people from entering the marketplace for various energy sources and things of that sort that make it somewhat cost prohibitive to wind up putting in your own solar panels. Even though, yes, I understand that there are all sorts of weird tax breaks and tax incentives if you do input or put in your own solar panels. But the cost of actually buying the solar panels, that's not really gone down. Although, and I realize that this is totally off the point here, but a lot of solar companies now are giving people solar panels and then selling them the energy created from the solar panels, which seems to be totally strange to me, because the whole point of solar is to get away from a power bill. Why would you want a free solar panel that you then have to pay a power bill on? That, to me, makes absolutely no sense. But because the cost of the solar panel itself has not decreased a lot over the past decade or so, people are trying to innovate and find new ways to expand the use of solar. And I'm sure in the next couple of years, people are going to be doing something similar with wind, to where we will give you a windmill and then we will sell you the energy from it. So the way I look at energy is, try multiple things: wind, solar, gas, fossil fuel, whatever, but diversify and then hopefully limit your costs. There's more in a moment. Bitcoin Not Bombs is a launching pad for nonprofits and social entrepreneurs into the financial freedom of the Bitcoin economy. Bitcoin Not Bombs offers premium publicity campaigns designed to facilitate an organization's adoption of Bitcoin as a payment system. Bitcoin Not Bombs is fully committed to being the hub of the nonprofit sector of the Bitcoin economy, maximizing the potential cross-promotion of all our clients and commercial partners. To learn more, visit bitcoinnotbombs.com. You can support FPP Radio by shopping online. Whether you're looking for precious metals, bitcoins, or books, you'll find that and more at shop.fppradio.com. Every purchase you make from one of my affiliates, like Namecheap, Spendabit, and Amazon at shop.fppradio.com helps fund FPP Radio. Or you can shop directly from FPP with Bitcoin in the Bitcoin store. That's shop.fppradio.com. The Doublespeak Dictionary by Leslie Starr O'Hara satirizes the marked difference between the ideal of we the people and the reality of we the elite, while offering an insightful glimpse into the clockworks of the totalitarian mind. Ever irreverent but never irrelevant, the Doublespeak Dictionary serves as a subversive and humorous but timely reminder that the emperor has no clothes. The Doublespeak Dictionary is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry. Online at fppradio.com.
So before I jump into the next question that might possibly actually wind up taking us through the end of the show, because it's about prisons and the prison population and things in regards to that. Before I jump into that question, I want to make sure that I tell you about Roberts & Roberts Brokerage. For over 35 years, Roberts & Roberts has been a trusted source for buying and selling your investment-grade precious metals. They also take Bitcoin for precious metal purchases and have permanently removed the minimum purchase amount for all orders paid in the digital currency. Call Roberts & Roberts Brokerage today for knowledgeable advice on investing and a forward-thinking approach to new technologies. 850-478-5270 or visit them online at rrbi.co. That's rrbi.co. The next question, it's not actually a question, it's more a comment, but I figure I would definitely cover it on the AMA episode because it's sort of a question of, hey, maybe you would want to talk about this. Perhaps you could cover the state of state and federal prisons and offer some ideas as solutions in an upcoming podcast. So the question, or rather the comment suggestion there was left to me where I was tagged in the comment. The post was shared by a mutual friend that says, America's prisons are not built to rehabilitate anyone. They're built to house animals. They are a dredge of undernourishment, rodents, filth, and decay. When a person is put in prison, they don't receive help to change their ways. They are instead stripped of all dignity and left in cages, treated no better than an animal at a 2-star zoo. When a person is treated day in and day out like a stray dog just shy of euthanization, what does America think the outcome is going to be? The U.S. has one of the highest rates of recidivism of any developed nation. We have longer prison terms than any country, or rather than any other country, and also imprison for lesser offenses. American prisons, almost 1 out of every 100 people. It's time for a change in our justice system. Maybe we should take tips from Norway. And then there are a series of links. And the first link comes from Salve Regina University, which I believe is out of Saskatchewan. And they've got a lot of information. Then there's something from businessinsurance.org about the prison industry. There's information from the BJS, which is the Bureau of Justice, I believe. And then there's an article from Business Insider about why Norway's prison system is so successful. Now, before I get into any of these articles, or I guess the one is not actually an article, it's more a essay sort of thing. It's a several-page PDF with information. This from Salve Regina University. But again, before I get into any of this, I just want to state two things. One, There was information recently from the Department of Justice that they would be releasing nearly 6,000 nonviolent drug offenders from federal prison at the end of the month. And I realize, that sounds like a large number, but when you have, I believe it's nearly 1 million nonviolent drug offenders in state and federal prisons across the country, then 6,000 is not really a lot. But still, good start. It's a very good start getting 6,000 nonviolent drug offenders out of federal prison. Also, if you look at the charts, and there is a chart in a couple of these articles where they show the prison population, and there's a big spike in 1980. And what you will notice if you go back and look through the history, and this is something that I happened to have done just a couple of months ago anyways, was looked back and there was some federal prison reform, sentencing reform, whatchamacallit, that got passed through at the federal level saying that, all right, federal judges, you no longer get to decide how long people wind up going to jail for various drug offenses. We will now tell you. Here's a handy spreadsheet where you input the information, and then it will calculate something, and it will tell you. The computer will tell you how long to put, whoever it is in jail based on criminal record, based on number of convictions, based on number of charges, etc., etc. So what they did a couple of months ago is instituted what they called drugs -2, where you still input the stuff into the computer, and then you subtract 2 levels. So that is what wound up reducing the sentences of a bunch of people. They're going to, again, let 6,000 people out at the end of October. It's actually going to be, oddly enough, I find this sort of, serendipitous. October 30th through November 2nd. October 30th is the beginning of Keenvention. Keenvention is a convention for sort of to highlight liberty activism that happens in New Hampshire. There's the Porcupine Freedom Festival that happens over the summer. That it's like a big giant camp in the woods and hear speakers, but it does not necessarily focus on New Hampshire activists or New Hampshire activism. There's the Liberty Forum that happens in late winter that, again, it has speakers that come from all over the country that talk about liberty ideas. But again, it does not focus on New Hampshire activists or New Hampshire activism. So Keenvention was created a couple of years ago. This is the third annual Keenvention. And I'm actually opening and closing the convention this year. I will be hosting the first ever political action panel at Keenvention. Begins October 30th, 9 a.m., and I'm giving the keynote speech Sunday afternoon to end the convention. So I just think that it's really interesting that these nonviolent drug offenders are going to be released during basically over the weekend of when liberty activists are getting together to talk about liberty activism. And one of the things that I'm going to highlight in the political action panel is not ways to just be politically active, but ways to be politically active and influence change outside of the two-party system. And one of the things that libertarians have been really vocal about over the last several decades is prison reform and that people should not be in jail for nonviolent drug offenses. And it seems finally, without even getting a libertarian in Congress, it seems as though libertarians have influenced policy through basically their vocalization. And one of the things, and this is something that I can save for later, but one of the things that I definitely want to highlight in the panel is ways that even people that aren't libertarians, like the progressives back in the 1920s and 30s and the socialists in the 1930s, they were able to influence change and get the major parties to adopt some of their ideas without winning office. I'll finish talking about the prison system in just a moment here on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio.
Hey, this is Michael Dean from the Freedom Fiends radio show. I've been working with computer programmer Derek Slopey to create Fiend Phone. I'm using Fiend Phone right now to talk with and record one of my co-hosts in real time. Take it, Davi.
Hey, this is Davi Barker, and I'm 1,000 miles away from Michael, but we sound like we're in the same room.
We sure do, Davi. So, Davi, please tell the nice people more about Fiend Phone.
Fiend Phone is free, open-source software that opens up a global world of possibilities for collaborative, high-quality remote voice media production, and I'm digging it.
People can try the Windows beta version of Fiend Phone right now at fiendphone.com. But we're also raising money to vastly improve Fiend Phone and vastly improve independent talk media worldwide.
So go to fiendphone.com to help out. Who will build the audio roads? We will, with your help.
That's fiendphone.com. FEENPHONE.com. Foxtrot, Echo, Echo, November, phone.com.
Fiend Phone. I never knew remote audio could be this good.
When her plush and comfy life suddenly and unexpectedly fell apart, Brooke and her dog Cloud set out to defy the odds. If this is a man's world, as they say, living on the streets is no place for a young woman. One day she awoke in the redwood forest and realized she had become a hobo, and would ultimately come to know exactly what it means to survive. How to Be a Hobo by Brooke Willett is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry.
So here in the final minutes, I want to get into some of the information here from the Business Insurance and also the Bureau of Justice Statistics about some of the problems with the U.S. prisons. And I can tell you some of the problems with the U.S. prisons before even reading these articles. And there's a difference between federal prison, state prison, and like county jail. But what you have at various levels are what they call, what are not actually, but what they call private prisons. So in Louisiana, for instance, they have what are called private prisons, and one of the operators of one of these supposed private prisons actually wound up suing the state because the state did not provide them enough inmates. So you have this basically a private company that will sign a contract with a government somewhere saying, we will operate your prison in exchange for fill in the blank, and you promise, you government, you state of Louisiana, you fill in the blank municipality, you promise to maintain our population at X percent. And I believe in this one prison down in Louisiana, it was 80%, where the state said, we will maintain your population at 80% capacity, and if we don't, then we will do X, Y, Z. So you've got these private companies that are running prisons, but you don't have private justice. You still have the state-run justice system, and these judges know that these contracts are in place to where, well, we have to maintain the prison population at a certain level. So you have this thing that basically it's fascism. It's the weird mixture of, private industry and state, and that's really what fascism is. So you've got these fascist prisons, and that's part of the problem. You also, as I was saying earlier, you have the problem of judges not really having leeway. You've got the mandatory minimum sentences and things of the like. And then what about the recidivism? Well, one of the problems there is people will wind up getting released, but they're not fully done with their sentence. They get put on parole, probation, etc. And, well, you wind up getting one of these parole checks, and where the probation officer comes to your house. You've got alcohol in your house. You're now in violation of probation. Back to jail with you, buddy. Or you fail a drug test because you smoked some cannabis. Well, you never would have been on probation in the first place had you not smoked cannabis. So you've got this weird thing to where, like somebody's taking cannabis for depression. They wind up getting busted for it. They get on probation. They continued smoking cannabis to deal with their depression, and they wind up violating probation because, well, it's depressing being on probation. So let's jump into some of the statistics here from the Bureau of Justice Statistics. Among state prisoners released in 30 states in 2005, about two-thirds, 67.8% of released prisoners, were arrested for a new crime within 3 years, and three-quarters, 76.6%, were arrested within 5 years. And again, this does not specify violent crime or one of these victimless crimes, just says they were arrested for a new offense within 3 or 5 years at 67.8 or 76.6% respectively. Within 5 years of release, 82.1% of property offenders were arrested for a new crime compared to 76.9% of drug offenders, 73.6% of public order offenders, and 71.3% of violent offenders. More than a third, 36.8% of all prisoners who were arrested within 5 years of release were arrested within the first 6 months after release, and more than half, 56.7%, were arrested by the end of the first year. 2 in 5, 42.3% to be exact, of released prisoners were either not arrested or arrested once in the 5 years after their release. 1/6 of released prisoners, 16.1%, were responsible for almost half, 48.4%, of the nearly 1.2 million arrests that occurred in the 5-year follow-up period. An estimated 10.9% of released prisoners were arrested in a state other than the one that released them during the 5-year follow-up. And within 5 years of release, 84.1% of inmates who were aged 24 or younger at release were arrested, compared to 78.6% of inmates aged 25 to 39 and 69.2% of those over the age of 40. And again, this is not necessarily because these people are, more likely to commit a crime. There's just so many crimes and so many offenses and so many things that, well, they claim everybody commits 3 felonies a day, and yeah, I believe them. What this shows is really that police sort of tend to stay on the same people, the same groups, if you will. Otherwise, how can you explain that, 68% of people that were released were arrested for a new offense within 3 years? So if you know, this guy's got a record, you're just going to go keep an eye on the guy with the record and see if you can keep nabbing him on things. That's what happens. I worked in a prison. I know that this happens, that there are people that say they're doing life on the installment plan because they know that they're going to wind up getting busted for something. It's not that they go out and try to commit crimes. Well, there was one guy that did because he was homeless, and he wanted a warm place to stay in the winter, so he would do something that he knew would get him 6 months, and he would have a warm place to stay from October until pretty much the end of winter. So there are some people like that try to get arrested because, his life's already screwed. He's got nowhere to live. He can't find a job because he's got a criminal record. So, what else is this guy going to do other than life on the installment plan? So you've got that, and then you've got, like I was saying, the people that, the police know this guy's got a record, so let's just keep an eye on him. We know he's going to mess up again. And then we can go back to the judge and say, Judge, you never should have given this guy such an easy sentence. He needs to be put away longer. So what is going on in Norway? I definitely don't have time to cover the entire thing, but I'll cover what I can. The article here from Business Insider, it says in Norway, fewer than 4,000 of the country's 5 million people were behind bars as of August 2014. That makes Norway's incarceration rate just 75 people per 100,000, compared to the 707 per 100,000 in the U.S., and that's actually incorrect. It's now 716 per 100,000, but this article is from about a year ago. On top of that, when criminals in Norway leave prison, they stay out. It has one of the lowest recidivism rates in the world at 20%. The U.S. has one of the highest at 76.6%. That's of people that get rearrested within 5 years. Norway also has a relatively low level of crime compared to the U.S., although if you look at statistics, the crime rate in the U.S. is actually going down, but you still have these mandatory minimums and 3 strikes laws and other stuff. And I might actually cover this a little more in depth on Friday. I initially thought there wasn't going to be a show, but well, there was only one day of the Robin Hood trial. So, yeah, join me on Friday.